Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Strife's Sanctum podcast. My name is Citizen Strife, and it's a Friday night, and I'm probably going to be dealing with traffic, but I don't care. I need to get this done, because Bravely Default and Suikoden are proving that they take a lot of time in their episodes, and I can't be bothered to do this tomorrow morning, for all I know. But today, I get to dive back into one of the famed franchises of the channel, and one I tend to get back to at least once a year, kind of the same way Final Fantasy operates, that being Ace Attorney. So, Phoenix Wright, Ace Attorney, Dual Destinies. I completed all 6 of the Phoenix Wright games on the channel. The other one's Great Ace Attorney and the Ace Attorney Investigations. If I get to them, I'll get to them eventually. And you never know if they're going to do the Professor Layton one. They probably will. I'm still holding out hope for another fucking game in the franchise, you know. But anyway, until then, let's talk about one that happened on the 3DS. In fact, the first of the two. Because technically, I think the Professor Layton game was also on the 3DS, but that's not canon. But Dual Destinies and Spirit of Justice were kind of the two that showed up on the 3DS, because at the time, like, the trilogy showed up on the Game Boy Advance, but then they ported to the DS, which is when I started playing them, and they got Apollo Justice, which I don't know if I actually played it at the time. I might have, or I might have experienced it some other way. I'm pretty sure I did, but I definitely know that I played these two games for the 3DS, and I do definitely want to talk about Dual Destinies today. I'll get to Spirit of Justice, which I think is honestly a better game, but I'll get to that on its own time. Suffice it to say, I do think Dual Destinies has its place, and I think it is better than 4. I don't know if I'd put it better than 2. 2 has its moments. I think the better cases in 2 are better than the better cases in this. The worst cases in this game are better than the worst cases in 2, so it's kind of weird. But I do like talking about Ace Attorney, and if you've listened to one of them, you've listened to how I operate in most of them. Talking about kind of differences in the gameplay, differences in the characters, and how each case kind of develops, and my personal vibes on them. Eventually, I want to go into deep dives of those eventually, but, I want to get through the series first before I want to do that. But after Apollo Justice, some time passes, and Phoenix Wright returns to being a lawyer. He gets his badge back, and he takes on not just Apollo and Trucy, but he adds Athena Sykes. And, I was going to say suffice it to say again, but I caught myself. This is Athena's game. Not even a question. So, if you like Athena, you'll like this game. If you don't like her, you'll find it kind of insufferable. Because I think this is a good game that balances all 3 main characters, even if Apollo sometimes gets the short shrift. Because Game 6 has a higher focus on Apollo and less on Athena. So it tends to balance itself out. Like, Phoenix is going to get his own cases because of course he will. He's the main character, he's the legacy guy, he's always going to get cases. So balancing the other 2 was interesting. And I do hope that for a new game, like, if they want to bring Apollo back, for whatever reason, bring him in a case or something. But I would like to see another game focus on Athena more. This one was her backstory, her introduction, all of that. Same thing with Apollo, but Apollo's been kind of like Phoenix Wright light, so it's kind of Athena being a female has a different kind of vibe. Being a younger person has a different vibe. She's a lot sportier. She's a energetic person. And I always felt that Apollo, no matter what, is just Phoenix Wright again. And it was nice to have somebody like Athena do something different, acting different, being a different character, having a different, like, sunshine and rainbows, but oh shit, her backstory's dark as shit. I don't want to spoil too much. I will put out a warning just in case, because again, I have played these, but I do want to more focus on the broad strokes rather than everything, though I will have to kind of for the ending, so bear that in mind. But if you hadn't watched my stuff or you hadn't played it yourself, bear that in mind. This is Athena's game, and I like her a lot. She's played very well. She has a very distinct personality, wardrobe, all that stuff, hairstyle, everything. Everything about her screams energy. And it's great because it also feeds into emotion. This is a game that focuses on emotion. Her new technique, which we had Phoenix with his bluffing and his Magatama, the Cyclops. Apollo had the perception ability. And the perception ability is neat, but I don't think it goes that far. This one kind of changes the way the gameplay goes. Mood matrix. She has a little thing called widget on her neck and chest that just like press it, changes the entire screen into this computerized cool fucking thing where she diagnoses noise in a person's heart and her feelings, because she can attune. She has analytical psychology background. She has this very keen sense of hearing where she can just attune to people on an emotional level. And if they're fucking around and don't know what they're doing, don't know how to do their emotions, or if they're lying to save their skin, or they're even unaware, she can pick up on that. You have 4 different emotional nodes. And much like picking things apart in the, you're picking apart a lie or you're pressing a lie to do more, what you're actually doing is picking a random emotion. So if somebody says something that is, oh, this was an emotional moment, this is terrible, and they're like flat emotion, or they were kind of happy about that, or they were shocked, or or even if an emotion seemed less or more, you can kind of gauge that and press on that and say, this is what I think you're lying about, this is what I think you're screwing with me about, let's fix it. And then you're able to just take evidence and pressing people for information, but you're adding another layer on top of it. Perception, did one cool thing, but it didn't do a lot. But taking an entire different screen and having like 4 separate options, adding a layer of depth to a game, which, I was following guides, admittedly, because I was, doing it for content purposes, but you're trying to puzzle everything together with these characters. And unlike, say, Danganronpa, Phoenix Wright has led you to answers, but doesn't handhold you as much as, say, Danganronpa or Raincoat does. So if you're smart, you'll pick up on things pretty quick. You can kind of gauge where the dialogue is going. You're never really out of the woods. But I do think having depth to the system, especially when you're into your 5th game, is a good thing. And you're not lacking for like Apollo's perception ability. You're not lacking for Phoenix Wright making a goof of himself. And that's the balancing act that this game presents, which is always helpful. But let's get to the cases themselves, because they're... Oh, actually, before I do that, I do want to mention Simon Blackwell. Usually considered like the 3rd best or 2nd best, depending on how people... I don't know if I like Godot as much as a lot of people do. Like, he's cool, and he's storyline relevant and everything in the 3rd game, very much so. But I never, got him so much. And I kind of figured Simon would have been the same thing. Like, I liked Francisca because she's dumb and, tsundere and all that shit. And she has the whip and she has a unique personality. But after a while, you get the law of diminishing returns. I've talked about this every single time in every single Phoenix Wright game. Because you're always beating them, they don't feel threatening. And the only one to ever, counteract this was Edgeworth, because he ends up, in most cases, on the happier side of things. He's still Phoenix's friend, so they do battles and shit. And Francisca in the third game, and an extent, your antagonism towards them doesn't really stand up to, I've done this for 5 cases, I've beaten you, you're not threatening anymore. Blackwell kind of does the same thing too, but he goes about it in a different way because he knows Athena. And his weird anachronistic style is very samurai-centric. And even in Japanifornia, where samurai was anachronistic even by Japanese standards, if this was a Japanese game, Japanifornia, he looks like a fucking weirdo. He talks like a fucking weirdo, and he's a convict, but he's a samurai. He keeps saying Sykes dono or Wright dono or whatever, things like that. But he makes up for it in presence, because he's kind of messing with people. He's not making coffee puns every 5 seconds. He's not. And even Clavier, to an extent, had the I'm, on your side, I'm not really an antagonist, this is kind of fun for me, let's just have a party kind of vibe. He was different, but I think Blackwell is still better in terms of presence, because you get past the diminishing returns, you still get the straight man. And Athena knows who he is, because they know each other through shenanigans of the final cases. They have a history, and they know each other in and out, and they kind of want to help each other begrudgingly. And that's kind of the crux of the game. The power that Blackwell has is the power of suggestion. It's used to interesting effect in Spirit of Justice, in the one case he gets, which is one of the worst cases in the history of the franchise. It just is. Some people like it. I don't. I don't like Big Top. I don't like Big Top from 2. I don't like the fucking soba noodle thing. I did my best with the voice acting there, but again, I didn't really like that. Anyway, but Blackwell has a presence. He's very fucking tall. He's very fucking demanding. He messes with the judge, and that's where a lot of the jokes come in, is he always finds ways to make the judge say something that it goes against Phoenix or Athena or Apollo, and he can do that. So that gets him points where just being an antagonistic attorney wouldn't really do it, because you had the Miles Edgeworth thing, the Godot thing, he's majorly involved in the plot, and you're trying to help him too, because he's incarcerated for a thing he won't admit to, or can't admit to, or knows what really happened but is taking the fall, shit like that. And it's your job to kind of work around his unique personality, because for as fun and energetic as Athena is, Simon is just a crass, brooding guy, but not in the I hate everything, this sucks, Vincent kind of way. More in the, you guys are just fucking dumb and I hate being around you. Why do you bother? The curmudgeonly annoying, which is fun. So them working together is great. And I'm glad that even in a small way he's brought back, even if it was for the Rakugo case. But again, that's a story for Spirit of Justice. But stories, they're self-contained mostly. The 4th and 5th cases are basically together, but Turnabout Countdown is your intro stage. They tell you Phoenix is back in action. He has to figure out a bombing incident, and you talk to a guy who's a bomb disposal expert, and try to talk him down, but also do all that shit to say he's the one who did all the fucking problems, and he was the one who did all these things, and trying to talk in an automated speak and spell on the dude's hand and his wrist while he's doing it, and then trying to do the like midnight bomber that bombs at midnight. Oh yeah, baby. That look in his fucking face. If you've watched a tick, Anyway, God, I'm old. Anyway, but yes, so you deal with that guy. And it's a basic case. There's nothing really crazy about it. Just it introduces Athena. It introduces... Actually, no. It does to an extent, but she doesn't really do much other than fumble around until Phoenix helps. So she gets introduced, but then you really get introduced to her in Monstrous Turnabout, because this is an Apollo-based case. And Apollo takes over because Trucy is taking him to this yokai village kind of thing, or Tenma town thing, and there's these urban legends and all these folklore things. I'm a sucker for folklore stuff, even in Japanifornia. They tried to do the thing where, oh my god, they're up in the mountains and there's a fucking Japanese village in Japanifornia out of nowhere. Like, even if you could believe, like, maybe say a San Francisco area, like high density of like Chinatown or Japanese or Korean or shit like that, sure. Remote village resort town in the mountains of Japan, like people wearing Japanese stuff and Japanese culture and shit like that. Like, that's stretching it. And this is stretching the thing a bit thin, even, because Yakuza, like, your mafia, okay, cool, I get it, but in Apollo Justice. But the longer the series goes on, the more it doesn't even try to hide that it's from Japan. I'm shocked it's still just called Phoenix Wright, because you would think that they wouldn't anymore, but whatever. So you go to this Tenma town tourist attraction, and they deal with very simplistic but strange case, a locked room mystery of one person dying, another person is awake in a chair and is framed for murder and all that, and you find out that he was framed in an interesting way, but because of the weirdness of his daughter and himself, like, the defendant is like possessed by this stuff, and he's wearing all these charms on his head, and he turns into this demon, demon bird thing, the Tengu, the Tenma Tengu, whatever the fuck. And having to do that voice was kind of nuts. I don't even remember what it sounded like. I just know I had to do it because this very stern, strong-looking guy suddenly is just this raving lunatic spirit thing. Stranger things have happened, but now we're getting into the realm of yokai. And then you have, like, other weird people, very weird people, like a fucking guy with cell phones on his shoulders, and, he sprays mist in your face, the model arrogance, and you suck. But, some of the characters in the story aren't all that interesting. Like, there's was it Phineas Finch, who's just this, I steal everything. I'm a pincher. I'm a did. He's a scaredy cat, annoying guy. But then he looks at you funny. He's like, don't hate on me. But it's just like, kind of, like, there are things about it I want to like. The pro wrestling angle, because I'm a wrestling fan, and I've been a wrestling fan for 30 years. That stuff is kind of neat in a goofy way. But even the yokai stuff, and I like it, the fact that they delve into it is a bit... I do think the mystical angle fits Spirit of Justice more. I think if this was done in Spirit of Justice as one of the side stories for Apollo or Athena off while Phoenix was doing the Karine stuff, it would have fit better, because the motif of the mysticism would have fit more, But as it stands in a standalone game that doesn't really have, like, the central theme is the Dark Age of the Law, which is more in tune with the third case. But Dark Age of the Law, mystical yokai nonsense. I like it, but I don't. And it also introduced Bobby Fulbright, and I'll get to him on his own time. But Turnabout Academy is one of the best things about this. I think I like Turnabout Reclaimed more, but Turnabout Academy is probably as good. You know, the stakes in Turnabout for Tomorrow and the Cosmic Turnabout are great, but there are things I don't like about it. But Turnabout Academy is cool because you have like a mock trial scenario, and you learn that a mock trial scenario ends up leading to an actual murder done in the same way as the mock trial script. So you have Athena taking the reins in this one, trying to help her friend Juniper, who Apollo was helping in the first case, and trying to, you start seeing this, budding romance between Juniper and Apollo, which is kind of neat. They don't do anything else with it. It's just a nice little crush thing. But Phoenix takes them to this, and they meet around, and they do the Dark Age of the Law, and they're in this like weird like tabloid mess of Juniper's dating this person, or wants to confess, like somebody wants to confess to her, but this other person wants to confess to her, and then this thing happens, and then this person happens, and you got a person with a cardboard box for a head, and then you have Professor Aristotle Means, who has one of the best freaking like transformations. And I do have to give a shout out to the breakdowns at the end. I think the breakdowns in the 5th and 6th games took advantage of the new hardware quite a bit, and just the breakdown of the dude at the end of this case is just like so fucking fantastic, because you go through the rigmarole of the story, and it doesn't last a whole bunch. I'd say these last 2 games have lasted longer, but it's not that long of a case. You go through the first day of like nothing's really going on, and then you build up, and then you get to the end, and you're just like, it's pretty cool. And then that final moment, the Matt Engard thing where you get the breakdown. I don't think any breakdown is going to beat Dahlia Hawthorne though, but I would say like Engard is one of the better ones. This one is definitely like probably my second favorite, just because what they do with it in a comedic way and a cool way. One from 6 actually interested me on a visual level, even if the character himself didn't interest me as much as Means did. But the way that Means breaks down and changes and does his stuff is unique and cool, and that's why I like this case so much. Cosmic Turnabout and Turnabout for Tomorrow. This is where Athena and Black Will take center stage, and I want to talk about them both together because it talks about an issue that I do want to present later. There's actually several issues in the game, to be honest, and like for all the fun that the game has, you're only as good as kind of the main crux of the game, and like your investigators and your prosecutors. And I've gone on record as saying that Emma Sky is my favorite, because I like Gumshoe, but Emma Sky has just this like Shion Uzuki-esque like, I don't want to be here. This is really dumb. Let me just be a forensic investigator. She's beaten down. Like in the 4th game, she's beaten down by being a fucking detective and like smuggling her forensic kits and things and following these annoying people. Anytime she gets the snackoos, she just has this like intense stare. And then every time she's happy, it's just like the breath of fresh air. And it's just like, yay, she's happy. And oh god, she's eating snackoos again. We're in trouble. You go from all that fun nonsense, because she was in the special case of the first game, The Rise from the Ashes, the remake. And then, actually, I'm trying to remember. I forget if it was at the end of the third game. I don't think it was. But either way, she was the legacy character in the GBA games. You bring her back in the fourth game, and then you bring her back in the sixth game, which is good, because it's like, she's young enough that she can stay around with Phoenix Wright and Miles Edgeworth forever. Just pointing that out there. Because again, I don't know how popular she is, but whatever. In this game, she gets ditched for Bobby Fulbright, this weird, upstanding, like, won't hurt a fly, will help a lady cross the street, the spirit of justice, not the spirit of justice, but the personification of justice, and the whatevers of justice, and the whatever, like, he's always screaming, or he's doing a moat face, it's like, and you get this, like, he's this very superimposing, but an upstanding guy, and he's fine, but that's the problem. Emma Skye is great. This guy is just okay. He doesn't even have gumshoes like likability of being a downtrodden, just detective, like old school detective. He's just, I'm the best, I'm the best person for justice, and I will not fall prey to your machinations and whatever. And then you just fuck around with him all day. So there's like 4 or 5 cases. You just kind of talk with him, and it's dumb, and it's like, okay, it's fine. But then you realize, like, he's the main villain. But he's not even that interesting. And I think that's the problem. Like, Cosmic Turnabout and Turnabout for Tomorrow, your goal is to get an astronaut friend of Apollo's off the hook for a murder of his best friend. But then you end up, framing Athena for said murder by mistake. The best parts about this case, though, these 2 cases are Black Willow's sister Aura, because she, again, owns the fucking scenery. She beats up her equipment and her robots. She hangs over them like they're just trash bins. She's deep-seated just annoyance with people, and it manifests in kidnapping and hostages, because why not? And then you have Yuri Cosmos, the guy who talks about being self-important and amazing and great. And you find out he's just some dude in a Segway. He doesn't really do anything. But he's not overstaying his welcome like Fulbright is. Every case. You get through to him and you just like, this is cool. This is a neat person. Because cases are usually only as good as the characters inside them. And as much as I like Cosmic Turnabout for its characters, there are story reasons that it doesn't work. And Athena and Simon coexisting and trying to figure out who framed them both, really, is fun. I like that. I don't know if I like the subplot of Apollo not thinking Athena did it, because it just seems like forced drama as a way to get Apollo some fucking screen time because he's the third wheel in this game. But, it's fine. And like, you get an Edgeworth cameo in there. It's kind of neat. You get a Pearl Faye cameo. And I think, you get a Clavier Gavin cameo in the third case as well. And that's one of the other things I do like, is seeing these legacy characters come back in bit parts here and there and do fun stuff in cases and be like, okay, they're here for a reason. They're here to remind us of better times, or to provide a different scenario, or to change the dynamic, because we've seen enough of the same people. Let's bring some people back and change it a bit. So they provide something. And Clavier, in the third case, he acts as a impromptu prosecutor of his own in the mock trial, so at least he's there for a reason. Edgeworth is the prosecutor in part 1 of the end of the game, so he has a reason for being there. He's trying to deal with the hostage crisis and doing these things. But for the fun that you get with those characters, what you end up doing is you have Phoenix Wright has to get a lot of screen time. Apollo has to get a lot of screen time with whatever he can get. Athena and Simon are going to take the lion's share of the story stuff because they're the ones in this case doing, they're defendants, or they are the ones most closely tied to what's going on in the Space Center. But because they kind of went through all the story stuff with Trucy, she's left doing side stuff. She's barely there as a magician. She barely does anything. She's there to be escorted by Apollo in the second case. She shows up as an escort for Phoenix in the Cosmic Turnabout and then becoming a hostage. And it just feels like for all the work they did in the fourth game, they don't give her anything to do. They had to reverse course and then make an entire case in the sixth game. One of the best cases, the magical turnabout. They had to make a whole case about her just to get her back in the fucking swing of things because they did nothing. It's like they basically gave Athena everything in the fifth game, Trucy nothing. They gave Trucy something to do in the sixth game. They gave Athena nothing to do in the sixth game. By and large. Because again, you can't take Phoenix's screen time away. You just can't fucking do it. He's the main character. I get that. But it does feel like it's like if you keep introducing characters, eventually some people are just going to be, hey, hang my coat. Keep checking me off this. Do stuff. Like it does feel like Trucy, for all the work that she got as the secondary lead in the fourth game, they just was like, we told her story, nothing. She's not even going to be part of the trial anymore. One of these days, I would like to see what would happen if you could pick your assistant and have them write separate scenarios for picking an assistant. So it's like if you want Phoenix and Athena, you do that. If you wanted Apollo and Athena, or if you wanted Athena to lead, then he would do it that. I mean, I know how much fucking work that would take. These are very, time intensive. But what if you wanted Maya Fey as if she's around, in the sixth game? What if you wanted Trucy to, do stuff in this game and actually be a member of the fucking trial for once, or do something, The more characters you introduce, the harder it is to stay focused on all of them rather than just not. So she gets nothing to do in this game. And then you find out that Bobby Fulbright is in fact the main villain, the Phantom. So how do they deal with the Phantom? He's an emotionless spy. Fun in theory, but in execution, very boring. He's very boring. By definition, his whole thing is I'm impossible to best. I have no emotions. I can do anything. This is what I do. I got off scot-free in all these cases because I'm emotionless and I can be anybody and say anything and act as anything. So you basically just took Bobby Fulbright as a character, a fully fleshed character, and flushed him down the fucking toilet. Because you had to make this mystery reveal of this Phantom guy. And then he just ends up doing spy stuff for a few minutes. And then he does the Mission Impossible mask, whatever. And that kind of loses its luster after 2 or 3 times of doing it. And that's how many times they do it, and it gets annoying each time because it's like, I was this guy, but no, I was really that guy, but no, I was really just a phantom, and I don't know what my face is. I don't know who I am. He's just there. He's just there, And yeah, the rug pull of, oh my god, the fancy guy who was your happy-go-lucky whatever the whole time was really the main bad guy, It's fine. I wish he would have had a Matt on guard motive, but being an emotionless fuck and, having nothing but just mimicking everybody else just felt like a downgrade to even his normal personality. You could have found, and I get it, the goal of the ending was to say everyone has emotions and emotions have parts in trials, and Athena's work as an analytical psychologist is amazing and whatever. That's great. That part I'm not debating. I'm debating just the way, because it takes forever. And again, you can't really do anything with the spy guy because he's in a courtroom. Like, if you're doing that in an action scene, that's fine. But in a stoic, boring, slow-moving visual novel, that just kind of wears thin after the first few minutes, and you're just left with, okay, let's just get to the ending, shall we? And it's still not a terrible case, but it just feels, I would have been even better if it was like Aura, because then it would have understood that, like, her motivation was sound, but, you know, it, in the scope of things, at least she had a tinge of, like, angst the entire fucking time. I could understand her being a complete asshole. Framing her brother? No, that would be a bridge too far. But again, this is like force of nature villains versus the ones with emotion. This is, shit like that. They could have done a better job. Anyway, let's get back to the good stuff. You get done with the game, you get Turnabout Reclaimed, which is a side story, 5-6. And this one is fun because there's barely any stakes, but it's fun because it's got an orca in it. And it's in aquariums. He's got orca stuff. You got a killer whale. And you get to see all these, like, cool tricks and stuff. I really need to do, like, aquarium. I mean, I've been to aquariums here and there. I haven't been to, like, SeaWorld and stuff like that in, like, decades. But, fun stuff like that. Cool aquarium tricks, circus tricks, stuff like that. Stuff I wish the circus would have been, the circus setup would have been great for that. I would have loved if, say, the circus stuff or the magic stuff would have been in the 3DS version, because you could do so much with the magic tricks, the circus tricks, the whatever. The cool thing about this is because you have, like, full motion video, you get to see some of the tricks here and there. You get to see the orca doing stuff as the case progresses, and she flops out of the tank and she's making these noises, and it's just cute. It's cute seeing this giant animal just make these funny noises and faces, and then Phoenix and Athena are just wandering around doing things, and learning about the aquarium. And Pearl shows up again. Another point for the cameos. Whenever you pull cameos with the legacy characters, it's huge. And because this case is just a side thing, it doesn't have the stakes. You can have Pearl just acting stupid. She's there on a field trip in high school, doing normal things. She's there trying to find fish, trying to eat fish, or trying to catch fish, or whatever, trying to catch a penguin, because there's a side gag with Athena trying to make a penguin like her, but it never fucking works. But Pearl, like, picks the penguin up and is instantly the best of friends, because it's Pearl. Of course they're the best of friends. Pearl's great, and just the gags in there. The gag of the scientist dude having a little penguin chick in his hair and trying to be a curmudgeon, but trying to fiddle around with his stupid hair because the penguin keeps sitting and sleeping in his hair. Just fun, stupid shit. It was cool. I don't think other characters, like, I don't think Norma DePlume or Marlon Rhymes were all that interesting, but, Sasha was great. Orla Shipley was great, diving into the tank and then doing all the cool stuff. You could tell I was excited about doing that last, because the kind of bleh I felt at the end of the Cosmic Turnabout, great setting and cool characters here and there, but it didn't, like, just the ass pull of the way Fulbright ends up is just kind of like, so I was happy to do just a dumb case, with a freaking orca in it. Because nothing says defending an orca like the person who cross-examined a fucking parrot, right? So if anybody's gonna do it, it's gonna be Phoenix, and it's just great. The interplay of the orca just making everybody feel good. And that's what the game should be, about feeling good and being happy and doing fun, stupid things. And that's what I liked the game at its best. But there are limits, I think, to the goofiness that you can present sometimes. So, at the end of the day, there's good things about Dual Destinies. And there's some good things. They go a little too far in some of the weirdness and the kookiness. And, as grounded as Phoenix Wright can be, there are moments where it's like, okay, the spirit medium stuff can be hit or miss here and there, but it ends up like you live with it because they do so much with it. The yokai stuff, like I would love the yokai stuff, but they play it too far, and they have some guy being like possessed by this weird ass demon, and you have to basically watch him be this fucking giant crow eagle thing. And it's a bit of a bridge too far. The Phantom Spy, who's non-emotional after spending hours being emotional and whatever, is kind of, But then you have a freaking killer whale doing killer whale things and playing to an audience and making it feel good. So it's like, it's an up and down game, right? Athena and Simon are the draw. Put it out there. No sweat. If you like Athena and you like Simon in the first bit, you're going to like them for the rest of the fucking game. It's just no doubt about it. I like the fact that Phoenix Wright is back in the saddle and gets most of the work, because Apollo is fine, but, he's my least favorite. So he's just Phoenix Wright over again. Warmed over Phoenix Wright doesn't work when you have the genuine article there. So, would I recommend playing Dual Destinies? Absolutely. If you have access to the 2 trilogies, and you've already played the first 4, I don't see why you wouldn't play this one. But go in it knowing that, it could be your favorite, but it's probably not going to be. Everything kind of hinges on the way the cases and the characters work, and I think in most cases they do. But if you're a fan of, say, like Emma Skye or Trucy Wright, you don't get a lot of them. Or heck, even if you're a fan of Apollo, he doesn't really get a lot to do in this game. So, you're better off playing Spirit of Justice if you like Apollo stuff, or playing Apollo Justice itself. Under the situation of knowing that Apollo Justice is not good, or as good, I'm back and forth, but I will say Dual Destinies is better on the whole than Apollo Justice. I do think it's kind of on par with And Justice for All, but it doesn't hit the heights of it. It doesn't hit the lows. It's just fine. But fine for a franchise that does hit as many heights as it usually does can, sometimes, take the good with the bad. So, recommended as a completion project, if nothing else. But that'll do for today. Got a lot of meat on this one. I kind of figured I would since I played through it. But anyway, let's see what's on the docket going forward. So, let's see. I did Gangsta, so I'm debuting that. At time of recording, it'll be tomorrow when I upload it. Dual Destinies, this will be, 2 weeks from now. Kowloon Generic Romance. I love that show so much. It was, I'm doing a lot of this was the best show of this season. Let's talk about it sort of thing with these reviews, because I'm doing the anime discussion, bit by bit by bit as the season goes. But this, I get to talk about Generic Romance in its entirety. Suikoden 1 and 2 Remaster. I'm gonna beat it in a couple of days, so I'll have shit to talk about in a few weeks. I'll be very happy. Let's see. To Your Eternity. I don't know if I'm gonna complete that show by the time January such and such rolls around. I'm gonna guess it's gonna be another. I mean, they've been 20 episode seasons, so it might be still in the it might still be in the realm of not yet finished. But if it does only go 12 episodes, then it'll probably finish by then. But, I could always push it back for something else. I'm not, too worried. And another game I did finish this year was No Sleep for Kaname Date. So I get to finish off the Somnium Files trilogy for the podcast. But that'll do for today, and I'll see you guys next time. Citizen Strife signing off.